Hello guys and welcome back to another episode of Bareham Engines. Right guys, as you can see, Paul is cracking on with the Renault V6. He's got the scales out here, just checking all the balance of the rods and the pistons again, making sure that everything's sort of matches up, even though it has all been balanced. But we have a manual. So this is thanks to a friend of mine, Chris Ince, who works at Renault, Purdue's Renault in, or County Renault now, in Barnstaple. He obviously has watched our video and seen the engine that we're doing, and fortunately, I think most of their stuff is, their technical data now is on the computer, but they do keep their manuals, and he's managed to source through and find the actual manual for this Renault V6, and it's got all the technical data and sizes and what have you for like the bearings, etc. So it's absolute gold dust. To be honest, I didn't even think of asking him because I've not for 1 minute thought that they would have this. These pages here are the most important ones for the crank clearances. So as I told you in a previous video, Paul has done his plaster gauging on the mains journals, just to clarify what clearance we're getting on which bearings. The way we tell, going by the book here, so you've got 4 numbers on the crankshaft and 4 numbers on the block. So if we have a look at the block here, it's the 4 numbers there, which are the 4 journals for the mains. So you've got all threes on there, and that arrow there points towards the front, okay? So that's how we tell on the block, which I didn't know that, to be honest with you. And then we've got 4 numbers on the end of the crank. We've got 3 7s and an 8, and then forward that way. So going by the chart here, this chart here, red, yellow, blue and black, I do believe. So we've got 4 sizes of bearings. So as you can see here, sorry, we've got red, yellow, blue and black, that's right. This chart here governs whatever numbers we've got. So we've got all 3s on the block. So it's this row here. And then on the crank, as you go 7 and 3, and that runs into this category here in between these lines. So they're yellows. So the first 3 are yellows, which we said anyway in the previous videos. Yellow is giving us about 1.5 thou of bearing clearance. Right then guys, all coming out the woodwork just before Christmas. December seems to be the month of it. So today's little saga, we did an engine February of this year. This was when we were sort of very newly into the YouTube channel, hadn't really took off yet, and we were still getting involved with doing the odd car, as in getting the car in, doing work on the engine, whether it be doing the engine completely, or we did go for a bit of a fad for some reason on the Volkswagen Audis. It seemed to be a thing of changing the pistons and rods to forged and H-section rods, forged pistons, H-section rods, that sort of thing. So we went for a bit of a spell of doing that actually. We did a Seat Leon Cupra R. Usually the reason we sort of would get involved with them is because usually the bores, providing they hadn't done big mileage or had a disaster, the bores will measure absolutely perfect. So what we would do is say, yeah, we will put forged pistons in, H-section rods, obviously it means a head off, so it's like doing a head gasket job really, except you're dropping the sump and taking the pistons and rods out. Anyway, we went for a spell of doing that. This is when we had Carlos here. Carlos didn't mind getting involved with the cars too much, and we had an Audi A5 in. So it started life as the car was a bit tuned anyway, it had a map on it and what have you. Didn't really know the ins and outs of it. It hadn't done massive miles, sort of 80 odd thousand-ish, and he wanted the pistons and rods in it. Will you have the car? We said, yeah, we would. But we haven't done an Audi A5 before. Bear in mind, this has got the 2-litre TFSI engine in it, a derivative of. And so, yeah, we took the job on. Well, it turns out when we actually got the car, the engine in the Audi A5 was mounted longitude. So you open the bonnet, and to look at initially, it looks like a fairly simple job, to be honest. But to get the engine to get the pistons and rods out and the sump off, it was just as easy, if not easier, to take the engine out. Trying to get the sump off was an absolute mare. Anyway, we had a chat with the customer, he gave us the go ahead. So we got the motor out, obviously got the cylinder head off, and had a look at everything. Obviously we were planning on going through the cylinder head anyway and refacing it as you would if you did a head gasket job. And the bottom end looked absolutely perfect. So it had all the gubbins on. And I rang him up and I said, listen, you've got two options here while we're at it. We can strip this completely and rebore it, put oversized pistons and this, that, the other. I said, but it's going to have to be an engine recondition. Or we can stick the pistons and rods in. It measures fine. I've got no problems with that. The only downside, obviously the cost is going to be quite a lot less because we're not overhauling the engine completely. I said, but you've got to bear in mind is on your invoice there is going to be a warranty issue, as in we're not reboring it, we're just deglazing the bores. This could happen, you know, there's no guarantee. Obviously, because it's going to be tuned, that's the intention of putting the pistons and rods in. It's going to be tuned, going to be fetching more power, etc. I said, so there is going to be a disclaimer on your invoice. Yeah, he gave us the go ahead to do it that way, so that's the way we did it. Anyway, this is where the problem starts. When I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago, I had an email off him. He's a lovely lad, lives in London actually. He said, got a bit of a problem. He said, I've took the car to be tuned. Why it's took sort of 10 months, I do not know. To be sort of tuned and set up again with the power I want to be running. He said, and they've said that the car's smoking and they won't go any further. You need to take it back to your engine builder. And I said, right, okay, how many miles have you done? Because I seem to remember having a conversation with you a few months back on the mileage was up around 7,000. He said, it's more like about 10,000 miles he's done. And I said, has it used any oil? He said, well, it did use a couple of litres in the first 2,000 or 3,000 miles, but it hadn't really used anything since. And he said, it hasn't smoked. He said, I noticed a little bit of smoking in the morning when I had it decatted. And I said, well, that's because you've had the cats out. I said, what colour was the smoke? White smoke. I said, well, that's just condensation really, because you haven't got the cats. I said, has it used oil since? Not really, no, it's used sort of that then. I said, well, that's pretty much normal if you don't bore it. I said, sometimes it can take new rings bedding in an old bore longer. Sometimes they don't bed in at all, depending what your old mat was like. So, yeah, I had no problems there. I said, it's done 10,000 miles, it's used a litre or two of oil, it's not a disaster. What have they said? And he said, well, it's a bit weird because they've said that there's this issue and they can't, you know, it's smoking like buggery now. But he said, I can't get to speak to one of the guys that's doing the work. He said, I can only speak to the guy that's on the desk. Well, by the sounds of it, it sounds, and I don't want to stereotype all tuners, but it does sound like a bit like one of these sort of tuning setups where they've got a guy on the front desk doing the phone work and he's completely bloody clueless by the sounds of it. He don't know what's going on. He's passing on messages. The lad who owns the car, I said, best thing to do is get them to be in contact with me and so I can have a word with him, because with all due respect, my customer doesn't know anything about, you know, the technical stuff. They won't do that. They don't seem to want to do it. They don't even want to speak to him. He can only get to speak to this one chap on the front desk who he says that never gets back to him when he asks him to. So I said, well, I had a chat with him yesterday and I said, well, this is an all too familiar sort of thing really for us. I said, we've had it in the past where, not saying that this has happened, but have they done all the checks? Have they done their checks, you know, before that they've done the tuning? They've obviously had it on the rolling road because now they're saying it's smoking, but have they done all the checks before? And they must have had it all written down, what your compressions are and whether it's had any sort of boost leaks or this, that, the other. I said, but, you know, at this stage, you need to get some more information off them. I said, but you need to show them your invoice there, what has actually been done, because it seems like they think you've had the engine overhauled, but you haven't. We've just chucked pistons and rods in it. And there's this disclaimer at the bottom which clearly says we won't be held responsible if the thing uses oil or smokes, etc., because it hasn't been bored, you know. But at this stage, I'm thinking if it had used 8 or 10 litres of oil in 10,000 miles, I could understand, but it hasn't. It doesn't seems to me like there hasn't really been an issue until it's got on the rolling road and they've started to tune it. So yeah, at this stage, I don't know whereabouts it's smoking, whether it's smoking on acceleration, deceleration, on idle. I haven't got a clue. But it's one of those classic cases where I'm not sure whether the customer has sort of misinterpreted what's actually been done originally, whether he's not reading the invoice at all, or he's just sort of got it in his head over time that we have reconditioned it, or whether he knows full on what's going on and he's just told them that it's, you know, he thinks if he sort of tells them that we've done a recon, then it's all going to get done for nothing. But unfortunately, at this stage, we just need to know a few more details on what's exactly happening. I did say to him, look, we've had it on the odd occasion where people have, some of these tuners have said, there's been a bit of an issue, and they said, oh no, your engine's, you want to go and see your engine builder, send it back there. And when it's come to it, we've had a look, stripped it, and it's melted a piston or something's happened. So yeah, bit of an unknown at the minute, guys, bit all up in the air. What I need to do is get to speak to the actual tuner really to see exactly what's going on, and then we can sort of bring a bit more light to it. But trouble is with things like this, it always seems when we speak to the customer, we're instantly trying to get out of some warranty, but we're not. We're just, you know, we're just trying to clarify exactly what's happened and sort of jog his memory onto what exactly has been done to the engine from this end. You know, when there's a clear disclaimer at the bottom of the invoice, and then he goes and tells someone that, you know, they've fully reconditioned the engine, so they suggest sending the car back here and getting us to sort it. Two totally different things. And the last one is 8, and going by 8 and 3, that runs into blue. So as far as the end one goes, so this will be this one nearest the front, they do recommend that that is a blue. Only thing is, we haven't got any blues. So obviously all we've got is the only stock that Scott has got. So these are the blues here. We've got black, yellow and red. Blues, going by the size here, this is your thickness, so obviously blues are going to give you more clearance than the yellows, but when you actually work it out, it's literally 1/3 of a thou. So as opposed to 1.5 thou clearance, which the yellows are giving us, that one there is going to give us, on the same journal as one of these, would give us 1.8 thou. But in these book of words somewhere, it does say that the allowance or tolerance for the clearance on this engine is 1 to 2 thou. So whether we use the blue or the yellow in that one, we're still going to be in tolerance by the looks of it. The best thing for us to do is use the yellow, I would have thought. Black's going to be slightly too much. That's going to take us over 2 thou on that particular one, which we don't want. So we're just going to go for a full set of yellows on the mains, and that's going to sort of still give us around 1.5 thou throughout the board. So that's absolutely perfect, right in the middle of the tolerance. So we're going to be more than happy with that. So once again, thank you very much, Chris. Much appreciated for this. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you ever so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We will be back Boxing Day. So what's that, Monday? Give you something to watch while you're eating your cold turkey and chips, I suppose. But until then, have a fantastic Christmas, guys, and we will see you on Boxing Day. Take care.